All right, the GOP 2024 presidential field is heating up. How many times are we going to say that between now and the actual election? Now there are 3 candidates vying for the party's nomination after entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy announced his bid earlier this week.
And several high-profile Republicans are signaling they could soon enter the race. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott is at the top of that list. Earlier this week, he made multiple stops in the first-in-the-nation caucus state of Iowa as a part of his Faith in America listening tour. So joining us now are Ashley Etienne, who previously served as communications director for Vice President Harris, and CBS News political analyst Leslie Sanchez. Welcome. It's good to have you both. Ashley, let me begin with you.
Sure.
It would seem, in listening to what we've heard so far, I was going to say on the campaign trail, can we call it that yet? It does seem clear that Senator Scott thinks that he can win by not attacking former President Trump. Could that potentially be a winning strategy for him?
Well, I mean, what's interesting is that all the candidates that have announced so far have run with the same tactic and strategy. None of them have actually mentioned former President Trump. But here's what I think, here's what I'm actually hearing from Republicans in leadership positions as well as Republicans from across the country, that there is a Trump fatigue that exists right now, that the Republican Party and Republicans around the country want someone who's much less divisive, who's unifying, and who's more presidential in ways that Donald Trump was not. The question is whether or not Tim Scott is that person. But I think the key is going to be to be as Trumpesque as they possibly can, because there's not any waning for or less support for Trump's policies, but less the tactics of Trump. So I think the key is going to be who can be Trumpesque without turning off moderates, Republican-leaning independents, those who defected from the party and voted for President Biden.
Which is interesting because, Leslie, as Ashley kind of shapes it out as such, you think of folks like Scott, who will be getting in the race against Nikki Haley. She attracted independents and more moderate Republicans in previous attempts. But what do you think would a matchup between them would look like, considering, you know, the recent polling suggesting Republicans are ready to move away from Trump?
If you're talking about a matchup perhaps between like Ambassador Nikki Haley and Senator Tim Scott, you know, it's interesting because you look at the geopolitical landscape there, coming from the same political environment, how that has changed, the diversity in the state. What's interesting about these candidates is they reflect a different image in terms of style, the breadth of issues that they cover, and the messages they're putting forward, different from what you saw and heard in the Republican Party 2016, 2020. That's a spark of good news, I would say, for the GOP. The challenge is what you and Ashley just talked about, is the cloud of the Trump campaign and the potential ability to raise significant amount of money that they want in their coffers. And what is that political liability going to look like? The other kind of churn that is within political circles is, what would Donald Trump do if he wasn't the nominee, if he didn't get the support? Would he go on and start his own third effort, you know, as an independent, you know, a la Ross Perot? There's a lot of concern about keeping the coalition together, the support together, especially in the early part of this primary.
Ashley, let's talk about the other side of the aisle. There were some reports this week that President Biden may not run for re-election. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think that he should. I can't imagine that he wouldn't. I think I would just rely on his former chief of staff, Ron Klain's statement when he left the White House, which is like, I see you on the campaign trail. So I anticipate that the president will. But if we could get back to the GOP for 1 second, I think what's interesting, and Leslie was talking about this a little bit, is that the more people who actually run and the more candidates that actually run in the primary could actually bode well for former President Trump. You know, they could crowd the field and actually he could, you know, carve out, you know, the sort of the Trumpies and you know, and that could lead to success for him. So I think that's an interesting factor too. And then on Tim Scott, I mean, I appreciate, I've been black obviously my entire life, and I appreciate him talking about the ills of racism and the corrosiveness of it on our society, but he's done little to actually do anything about that. He was leading the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act negotiations from the side of the Republicans, and actually it died, you know. So that's my one concern about him is you know, his authenticity about these issues. He talks about about them, but what is he actually doing about them? And then his tone is very different than Ambassador Haley's. I mean, it was very doom and gloom, and hers was sort of Reagan-esque in a way that I just hope that the Republicans will move down that path rather than the alternative.
And there is one name we haven't even mentioned yet as we talk about potential GOP presidential nominees, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Leslie, when is he going to get in this race? A lot of polling suggesting it's his to lose the nomination on the Republican side.
Even among individuals who are supporters of the governor, they do look at large at where the Trump factor is going to be with Ron DeSantis. I don't think there's any incentive for him to announce any earlier than his campaign feels fit. They have all the money. They're getting the media attention. And right now, he's not getting the types of attacks politically he would have once his name is thrown into the ring. So I think for him, sitting back and kind of watching this dynamic play out, especially since he's so cash rich, is a good choice for the governor.
It'll be interesting, though, Leslie, to see how that dynamic shapes up, because we've already seen a bit of tension, shall we say, with former President Trump, making it very clear.
That's a nice euphemism, Elaine. That's very tension.
He's already
That's
gone
very
after the governor of Florida. Yes, yes. More to come, I have a feeling. All right, Ashley Etienne and Leslie Sanchez, great to have you both. Thank you.
Thank you.